I said get out, you don't belong here. The words, sharp as shattered glass, cut through the summer air. Brenda Whitmore, a woman of 48, stood clad in designer tennis whites, her face hidden behind oversized sunglasses. A phone was pressed to her ear, while her free hand jabbed an accusing finger at two children. A blotchy, furious red crept up her neck and her voice climbed with each syllable. Yes, 911, I need police at the Riverside Heights community pool. Immediately. Two individuals have broken in. They're aggressive, threatening residents. We need someone, now. The scene was shocking not for the anger but for its target. The individuals were 12-year-old twins. Marcus and Maya Henderson stood frozen at the pool's edge, their eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and raw fear. In his trembling hand, Marcus clutched a laminated pool pass, the same pass that legally granted them entry, the same pass that proved they had every right to be there. Tears began to well in Maya's eyes as she scanned the growing crowd of adults, her mind racing to understand their crime. They had only wanted to swim. In the distance, a siren began its mournful wail, growing louder with each passing second. Marcus's breathing hitched, shallow and rapid. His hand flew instinctively to the watch on his wrist, his late father's watch, as if its cold metal could somehow shield him from what was coming. Maya grabbed his other hand, her small fingers squeezing his with desperate strength. "Marcus, what did we do?" she whispered, her voice cracking. He couldn't answer. He didn't know. The other pool-goers formed a silent, watching circle. Some raised their phones to record, others murmured amongst themselves. A few looked away, their discomfort a palpable thing, but no one stepped forward. In the midst of the crowd, the twins were utterly alone, two children branded as criminals for the crime of existing in a place where one woman had decided they didn't belong. The sirens screamed, closer now. Marcus could feel his heart hammering against his ribs, a frantic, painful rhythm. This couldn't be happening. They had their passes. They lived here. They belonged here. But Brenda Whitmore's voice droned on, loud and insistent, painting them as threats, as intruders in this quiet suburban paradise. Then, just as the first police cruiser swung into the parking lot, another vehicle arrived. A black SUV with tinted windows braked sharply near the pool entrance. The driver's door opened and a woman emerged. She wore a tailored navy pantsuit, her hair swept back in an elegant twist. A small golden pin on her lapel caught the afternoon sun. She moved with a quiet purpose, an authority that made people instinctively part for her. Brenda, still spinning her tale of aggression and trespass to the 911 dispatcher, finally looked up. When she saw who had arrived, the color drained from her face. Because the woman now striding toward those two terrified children, the woman now kneeling to embrace them as they finally collapsed into tears of relief, was about to turn, and the look in her eyes was one that could freeze fire. This day had not begun with sirens and tears. It had begun 30 minutes earlier with sunshine and the smell of cinnamon toast, a lie of a morning that promised nothing but ordinary joy. 30 minutes earlier, the sun was just climbing over the tree-lined streets of Riverside Heights, Connecticut. It was the kind of neighborhood that graced the covers of magazines with titles like America's Most Desirable Communities. Behind pristine iron gates lay manicured lawns, three-car garages, and homes with price tags that made most people's eyes water. It had everything: tennis courts, walking trails, and the crown jewel, a beautiful, Olympic-sized swimming pool. Riverside Heights prided itself on its progressive values. Rainbow flags appeared on porches in June. Yard signs proclaimed that in this house they believed in science, kindness, and equality. The HOA website boasted of a diverse, welcoming community. It was a place of neighborly smiles and children on bicycles, a portrait of perfection. But appearances can be a masterful deception. Beneath the glossy surface, tensions hummed. Whispered conversations at HOA meetings about preserving the character of the neighborhood, uncomfortable silences when certain families moved in. It was a subtle prejudice, the kind that could be easily denied because it never announced itself loudly. It was invisible to those who didn't have to feel it, but unmistakable to those who did. And on this particular Saturday morning, that quiet hum was about to become a roar. Inside a colonial-style home on Maple Drive, the Henderson family was starting their day. Sunlight streamed into a kitchen filled with the aroma of coffee and toast. On the walls hung photos of vacations, school portraits, and one, displayed prominently, of a handsome man in a firefighter's uniform, his arms wrapped around his wife and two young children. That man was David Henderson. He had been gone for 3 years. Mayor Jennifer Henderson stood at the counter, already dressed for work, though it was barely 8 a.m. At 42, she carried herself with a quiet strength forged in unthinkable loss. Her pantsuit was crisp, her makeup subtle. But a closer look revealed the exhaustion etched around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. She was the first black mayor in Riverside's 150-year history, elected on a platform of unity and progress. She hadn't anticipated how heavy that promise would become, especially when half the city seemed determined to see her fail. Spread before her were notes for that evening's town hall, another contentious debate about the affordable housing project she was championing. The opposition was fierce, and at times ugly. People used coded phrases about property values and crime rates to voice sentiments they dared not say aloud. 3 years ago, her husband David had run into a burning school to save trapped children. He got 6 of them out before the floor collapsed. The city called him a hero and named a park after him. They gave Jennifer a medal at a ceremony where she had to smile while her heart shattered. Moving to Riverside Heights 6 months ago had been an attempt at a fresh start, a place where her children could just be children again. But she was learning that fresh starts were harder than they looked. "Mom, are you listening?" Jennifer looked up. Her daughter Maya stood before her, hands on her hips, a grin lighting up her face. Maya was 12 years old, pure energy and confidence, with her father's infectious smile. She was already in her swimsuit, ready for the pool. "Sorry, baby," Jennifer said, setting down her coffee. "What was that?" "I said, did you know the pool has a 10-meter diving board? Marcus says I can't try it, but I think he's just scared." "I am not scared," a voice drifted from the doorway. Marcus Henderson entered, his nose buried in a book about constellations. Where Maya was outward energy, Marcus was quiet intensity. He wore his father's old watch, far too big for his slender wrist, a tangible piece of the man he missed so deeply. After his father's death, Marcus's anxiety had bloomed into something larger, a constant fear that something terrible was about to happen. "You're scared of everything," Maya teased. "I'm cautious," Marcus corrected, not looking up. "There's a difference." "Kids," Jennifer interrupted gently, a smile touching her lips despite her weariness. This was normal. This was what she fought for. "Ready for the pool?" "Yes," Maya shouted. "We've been waiting all year." Marcus finally looked up from his book, a flicker of worry in his eyes. "Mom, are you sure it's okay? I mean, we have the passes, but what if—" "What if nothing?" Jennifer said firmly, cupping his face in her hands. "You belong there as much as anyone else. You are residents. You have every right to use that pool. Understand?" Marcus nodded, though the fear didn't completely leave his eyes. Jennifer pulled them both into a hug, breathing in the scent of sunscreen and childhood. "I am so sorry I can't come today. I have meetings, but I promise, I will try my hardest to meet you there by 3. "It's okay, Mom," Maya said, a hint of disappointment in her voice. "We know you're busy." "I love you both more than anything," she called as they wheeled their bikes from the garage. "Love you too, Mom," they called back. And then they were gone, pedaling off toward what should have been a perfect summer day. But an uneasy feeling settled in Jennifer's chest. Perhaps it was just a mother's instinct, or perhaps it was the hard-earned reality of being a black mother in America, where sending your children to a swimming pool required a mental checklist of all that could go wrong. 3 streets over, Brenda Whitmore was starting her morning with very different thoughts. Standing in her immaculate marble kitchen, she scrolled through her phone with growing irritation. A 15-year resident and vice president of the HOA, Brenda considered herself a guardian of Riverside Heights. She had made it her business to maintain standards, but lately she felt those standards slipping. New families were moving in. That new mayor was pushing policies Brenda was certain would ruin everything. Brenda would have been offended to be called racist. She considered herself a good person. But the truth she would never admit, even to herself, was that her discomfort had little to do with property values and everything to do with who, exactly, was moving in. She'd been watching the Henderson family since they arrived. Today, after her morning tennis match, she planned to patrol the pool area, ensuring everyone using it was properly registered. She had no idea that her obsession with rules was about to intersect with the lives of 2 children, and that the collision would ignite a fire that would engulf the entire community. Across town, officers Ryan Mitchell and Sarah Banks were starting their shift. Mitchell was a by-the-book cop, increasingly weary of suspicious person calls from wealthy neighborhoods. His partner, Banks, one of the few black officers on the force, felt the weight of every call that required her to explain to people who looked like her why their very presence was considered a threat. Neither of them knew it yet, but in less than 30 minutes their patrol car would be racing toward the Riverside Heights community pool. They were responding to a 911 call about two aggressive intruders, two 12-year-old children with valid passes and hearts full of hope for a fun summer day. Before we continue, you should know that this is a story of a summer day that began with laughter and ended with sirens. It's a story that will test your patience and break your heart, a reflection of a reality we cannot ignore. So listen closely, because what happened when Marcus and Maya Henderson arrived at that pool is about to unfold. The morning sun was a warm hand on their backs as Marcus and Maya Henderson pedaled their bikes through the tree-lined streets of Riverside Heights. They were laughing, filled with the simple, pure excitement of a summer day stretching out before them. Maya chattered about perfecting her butterfly stroke while Marcus listened, a quiet smile playing on his lips. They were completely unaware that the next hour of their lives was about to become a nightmare they would carry forever. When they reached the pool entrance, Marcus held his key fob to the electronic reader. A green light flashed. The gate clicked open with a quiet welcome. They were in. The place was beautiful. The water was a sheet of sparkling sapphire, framed by neat rows of lounge chairs and perfectly manicured landscaping. A few families were already scattered around, and a familiar knot of anxiety tightened in Marcus's chest as he felt their eyes on him. His fingers instinctively found the worn metal of his father's watch, spinning it on his wrist, a nervous habit he couldn't break. "Come on," Maya whispered, sensing his unease and grabbing his hand. "We belong here. Mom said so." They found two empty chairs and set down their bags. Just then, a warm voice called out, "Well, hello there. You must be the Henderson children." An older Latina woman with kind eyes and silver hair pulled into a neat bun walked toward them, a genuine smile on her face. "I'm Eleanor Rodriguez. I live just down the street from you on Maple Drive. I'm the one who brought over the chocolate chip cookies with sea salt when you moved in." Maya's face lit up. "I remember those. They were amazing." Mrs. Rodriguez beamed. "Your mother has told me so much about you both. She's a wonderful woman. This city is lucky to have her as mayor. Is this your first time at the pool?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied softly. "Well, you're going to love it. And Maya," she said, her eyes twinkling, "your mother mentioned you're quite the swimmer." Maya grinned. "You'll definitely get to see." That simple kindness was all it took to melt Marcus's anxiety. Maya dove into the pool with a joyful splash, and he settled into his chair with his astronomy book. For 20 minutes, the world was perfect. A fragile, sun-drenched peace settled over them. Marcus was lost among the stars in his book. Maya was a blur of graceful motion in the water. They were just kids enjoying a summer day, a feeling so simple and yet, for them, so rare. And then, the fragile peace shattered. Brenda Whitmore arrived. She swept through the gate as if she were royalty arriving at a court she owned, dressed in designer tennis whites, her face obscured by oversized sunglasses. A clipboard was tucked under her arm like a scepter. Her eyes scanned the pool area with the scrutiny of a general inspecting her troops. Then her gaze landed on Marcus and Maya. Her stride faltered. Her lips thinned into a hard, disapproving line. She didn't recognize these children, and in her 15 years in Riverside Heights, Brenda had made it her business to know everyone who belonged. She walked over to Mrs. Rodriguez and sat, leaning in close. "Eleanor," she said in a stage whisper that carried across the water, "who are those children?" Mrs. Rodriguez looked up from her book. "Oh, that's Marcus and Maya Henderson, the mayor's children. They live on our street. Lovely kids." Brenda's jaw tightened. "I don't recall seeing them at the new resident orientation, and I certainly don't remember approving their pool passes." Mrs. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Brenda, you don't personally approve every pass. Patricia in the office handles that. They're residents. Of course they have passes." But Brenda was already on her feet, her stride short and clipped, a woman on a mission. Marcus saw her coming first. Something in the woman's rigid posture made the cold dread creep back up his spine. He closed his book, his hand flying to his father's watch. "Well, hello there," Brenda said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that didn't reach her eyes. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Brenda Whitmore, Vice President of the Riverside Heights Homeowners Association." She announced the title as if it were a royal decree. "Hi," Maya said politely, treading water near the edge. "I'm Maya, and this is my brother Marcus." "How nice. And are you visiting someone today? Which family are you guests of?" Maya's brow furrowed. "We're not visiting. We live here." "Oh?" Brenda's tone was thick with disbelief. "You live here? In Riverside Heights?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said, his heart beginning to hammer against his ribs. "Number 247 Maple Drive." A flicker of recognition crossed Brenda's face, but she pressed on. "I see. And does your mother know you're here? Unsupervised?" The twins exchanged a confused look. They were 12. The pool was dotted with kids their age without parents hovering over them. "Yes, ma'am," Maya said, a slight edge creeping into her voice. "She knows." Well, I'm going to need to see your pool passes. All residents must present them upon request." Marcus's hands trembled as he retrieved his laminated pass. Maya climbed out of the pool to get hers. Brenda snatched the cards from their hands, her movements sharp and accusatory, like a detective seizing evidence. She scrutinized them, her eyes darting between the photos, the names, the address. They were flawless. But Brenda wasn't looking for validity. She was looking for a reason. Her voice rang out, sharp with victory. "These don't have the HOA stamp." Marcus blinked. "The what stamp?" "The official HOA stamp. Patricia is supposed to stamp all new passes. These are improperly processed." "But we just got them last week," Maya protested. "The office said they were ready." "Well, they're not. And until this is sorted out, I'm going to have to ask you to stay out of the pool." Maya's mouth fell open. "What? But we just..." "Out of the pool. Now." Conversations around them quieted. Heads turned. A few people discreetly pulled out their phones and began to record. Brenda called the HOA president, Patricia, and put the call on speaker. After Patricia confirmed that the passes were in fact perfectly valid and the stamp was a new, not yet implemented policy, a flush of angry red crept up Brenda's neck. She had been publicly undermined. When people like Brenda feel cornered, they don't back down. They double down. "I still have concerns about these passes," she announced, her voice louder now, defensive. "This is a private facility. We have rules." "But she just said our passes are valid," Maya said, her frustration boiling over. "Don't you raise your voice at me, young lady," Brenda snapped. "She wasn't raising her voice," Marcus said, stepping closer to his sister, his own voice shaking. "She was just explaining. I will not be spoken to disrespectfully by children. This is exactly the kind of behavior that concerns me." Mrs. Rodriguez stood up. "Brenda, this has gone far enough. The children have done nothing wrong." Just then, a man's voice cut through the tension. "Brenda, what in God's name are you doing?" It was Doug Whitmore, her ex-husband, arriving with his girlfriend. He took in the scene, his ex-wife looming over two frightened children, and his face fell. "Doug, stay out of this," Brenda hissed. "You're harassing kids," he said, his voice low and angry. "What is wrong with you? These children don't have proper authorization. They have passes. Patricia just told you they're valid on speakerphone. What more do you want?" Being challenged by her ex-husband in front of an audience was the final humiliation. "I have every right to verify that people using this facility belong here," she shouted. "I am responsible for community safety." "Community safety?" Doug shot back. "They're 12-year-old kids. Admit what this is really about, Brenda." The unspoken words hung in the humid air, heavy and undeniable. Maya's eyes filled with tears. "We just wanted to go swimming," she whispered. "We didn't do anything bad." Marcus stood a little taller, his fear momentarily eclipsed by a surge of protective anger. He looked directly at Brenda. "You need to stop treating us like this. We have every right to be here." That simple act of defiance, a 12-year-old boy demanding to be treated with dignity, was what sent Brenda Whitmore over the edge. "That's it," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "These children are being disrespectful and threatening. I'm calling the police." Mrs. Rodriguez gasped. "Brenda, no!" But she was already dialing 911. When the dispatcher's voice came on the line, Brenda spoke with deliberate, theatrical clarity, ensuring everyone could hear her version of the truth. Yes, I need police at the Riverside Heights community pool immediately. 2 individuals have trespassed into our private facility. They refused to provide proper authorization, and when I tried to ask them to leave, they became aggressive and threatening. We need officers here right away. The world began to tilt. Marcus felt the air refuse to enter his lungs. His mother's words echoed in his head, from the talk she'd given them when they first moved here. Keep your hands visible. Don't make any sudden movements. Be more polite than you've ever been in your life. He remembered the tremor in her voice, the tears she'd tried to hide afterward. Maya grabbed his hand, crying openly now. Marcus, what did we do? What did we do wrong? He couldn't answer. They had done nothing wrong. They had followed every rule, and it didn't matter. The sound of sirens grew from a distant cry to an ear-splitting scream. Mrs. Rodriguez moved to stand beside them, a protective hand on Maya's shoulder. You two have done nothing wrong, she murmured. Do you hear me? Nothing. Marcus's breathing hitched, the panic taking over. Brenda stood with her arms crossed, her face a mask of cold vindication. She had no idea that her world was about to be turned upside down. She had no idea that her actions were about to be broadcast to the entire nation. All she knew was that she had called the police on 2 black children for the crime of wanting to swim on a summer day, and she felt completely and utterly justified. The police cruiser pulled into the parking lot, and Officer Sarah Banks stepped out into the oppressive heat. Her stomach plummeted. She'd been a cop for 5 years, long enough to recognize this scene on sight. She knew the script by heart. 2 terrified black children, and a self-righteous white woman pointing at them as if they were monsters. Marcus was trembling from head to toe. Maya was fighting back tears, her jaw clenched, trying desperately to be brave. They held hands like a lifeline. Before the officers could speak, Brenda Whitmore descended upon them. Officers, thank God you're here. These 2 broke in. Their passes aren't valid, and they became aggressive when I questioned them. I'm the HOA vice president, and I need them removed from the premises. Officer Banks looked from Brenda's indignant face to the twins. These weren't threats. These were scared children. Their body language screamed fear, not aggression. This was the kind of call that chipped away at her soul. Her partner, Officer Mitchell, approached the twins calmly. Hey there, I'm Officer Mitchell. Can you tell me your names? Marcus's voice was a choked whisper. Marcus Henderson. This is my sister Maya. Okay, Marcus and Maya, do you have passes to be here? With violently shaking hands, Marcus handed them over. Mitchell examined the laminated cards. Names, address, photos, official logo. They were pristine. He looked up at Brenda. Ma'am, these passes appear to be in order. What exactly is the problem? They don't have the proper HOA stamp, Brenda insisted, holding her clipboard like a shield. The protocol wasn't followed. Officer Banks felt her jaw tighten. Ma'am, is the stamp legally required for these passes to be considered valid? Brenda hesitated. Well, it's HOA policy. But not a legal requirement? Banks pressed. The silence was its own answer. Doug Whitmore stepped forward. Officers, these kids have done nothing wrong. This is about... He stopped, but he didn't have to finish the sentence. Brenda whirled on him. Don't you dare, Doug. This is about community standards. Is it? Doug challenged, his voice laced with disgust. Because I've lived here 15 years and I've never once seen you interrogate a white child about their pass. The crowd went still. Someone had finally said it. Officer Banks knelt to the twins' eye level. Marcus, Maya, did you 2 break any rules today? Maya's tears finally spilled over. No, ma'am. We just wanted to swim. We live here. We didn't do anything. Her voice broke. Banks felt her own heart crack. She saw every time she'd been followed in a store, every time she'd been questioned in her own neighborhood, reflected in their frightened eyes. Mitchell returned from his patrol car. Address checks out, registered to a Jennifer Henderson. The passes are legitimate. There's no violation here. You would think that would be the end of it. It wasn't. I want to speak to their mother, Brenda demanded. They're here unsupervised. Ma'am, Banks said, her patience wearing thin. They're 12 years old. They haven't broken any laws. We're done here. Brenda's face flushed with fury. I'm filing a formal complaint. I know the chief of police personally. That's your right, Mitchell said evenly. But there is no crime here. As they prepared to leave, Brenda played her final card. Fine, if the police won't do their job, I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting. These passes will be revoked for security concerns. That's when Marcus, quiet, anxious Marcus, finally broke. Why do you hate us? The question was ripped from his soul, a raw cry of pain and confusion. We didn't do anything to you. We just wanted to swim. Why do you hate us so much? Maya was sobbing now, her small body shaking. You called the cops on us for swimming. For swimming? What did we do wrong? Just tell us what we did wrong. The raw agony in their voices sliced through the air. Some in the crowd looked away, ashamed. Brenda opened her mouth to justify herself, to explain that it was about rules, not race. And that's when a new sound cut through the tension, the squeal of tires on hot asphalt. A black SUV with tinted windows screeched to a halt near the entrance. The engine died. The driver's door flew open, and a woman stepped out. She was dressed for City Hall in a navy pantsuit, the mayor's pin on her lapel catching the afternoon sun. But the look on her face was not that of a politician. It was the primal protective fury of a mother who had just received a text from her terrified child saying the police were there. Brenda Whitmore turned to see who had arrived. The color drained from her face and her mouth fell open. She was face to face with Mayor Jennifer Henderson. Brenda Whitmore's mouth worked, but no sound emerged. Before her, moving with the deliberate grace of a gathering storm, was not just the mayor of Riverside. She was the mother of the 2 weeping children Brenda had just summoned the police to handle. She was a woman who had buried a hero husband and rebuilt a life from the ashes through sheer force of will. She was a mother whose children had just been terrorized for the crime of being black at a swimming pool. And in that frozen, sun-drenched moment, Brenda Whitmore knew she had just made the gravest mistake of her life. What happens when a mother's righteous fury meets a woman's final, public reckoning? This is that moment. The moment everything changes, and it forces a question upon us all. If you were Mayor Henderson, what would you do? How do you balance the fierce, primal need to protect your traumatized children with the duty to represent an entire city? What does justice even look like here? Let's watch as Mayor Jennifer Henderson closes the distance, to her children, to the woman who threatened their peace, and to a confrontation that will define the very soul of Riverside Heights. Mayor Jennifer Henderson didn't just walk, she advanced, propelled by the combined forces of a mother's protective rage and a leader's unshakable authority. Her assistant, Rachel, and a security detail followed, a silent honor guard, but Jennifer's gaze was fixed on a single heartbreaking scene. Her children, sitting on a concrete curb, humiliated and shattered. She'd been in a critical budget meeting when her son's text had pierced through the noise, 3 words that had stopped her heart. Mom, police here. She hadn't offered excuses or waited for permission. She had simply grabbed her things and run. Now, seeing Marcus shaking, seeing Maya's tear-streaked face, seeing the officers and the silent, watching crowd, a coliseum that had witnessed her children's terror, something fierce and ancient rose within her. She went straight to her children and knelt on the rough concrete, oblivious to her expensive suit. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? Her voice was a soft sanctuary, meant only for them, but her eyes were already scanning, absorbing every detail, cataloging the faces of city council members she recognized in the crowd. The twins collapsed into her arms, their sobs raw and wrenching, the kind that only break free when terror finally gives way to safety. Jennifer held them tight, a hand on each of their heads, whispering, I'm here, you're safe now. When she rose, the mother receded and the mayor emerged. A palpable shift in the air silenced the murmurs of the crowd. She turned to the 2 officers. I'm Mayor Jennifer Henderson, she said, her voice clear and carrying, stripped of all warmth. These are my children. Perhaps someone can explain to me why police were called to harass them at a pool they have every legal right to use. Officer Banks, visibly uncomfortable but respectful, stepped forward. Mayor Henderson, we responded to a 911 call. We've verified their residency and their passes. Everything is in order. They've done nothing wrong. We were just about to clear the scene. Jennifer's eyes swept the crowd. Who made the call? A silent, collective turning of heads, 100 pairs of eyes, all settled on one person. Brenda Whitmore. In that instant, the blood drained from Brenda's face as the full catastrophic weight of her actions came crashing down. She hadn't just called the police on 2 children. She had called them on the children of the mayor, the first black mayor in the city's history. Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Mayor Henderson, this is a misunderstanding. I was simply following security protocol. As the HOA vice president. Stop, Jennifer said. The word was quiet, but it had the finality of a gavel strike. Just stop. She pulled out her phone, angling the screen for all to see. I've already obtained the 911 recording. You described my 12-year-old children as aggressive threats. You said they were threatening residents. My children. Doug, Brenda's ex-husband, stepped forward, his voice thick with shame. Brenda, for God's sake, just apologize. For once, just admit you were wrong. But she couldn't. Backed into a corner, she deflected. If Patricia had processed the passes correctly, with the proper stamp, I processed those passes myself, Brenda, a new voice cut in. It was Patricia Chen, the HOA president, who had just arrived. Everything was done by the book. Stop trying to blame others for your prejudice. Brenda tried a different tactic, adopting the tone of a reasonable person making a reasonable point. Mayor Henderson, you must understand, with your policies on affordable housing, the changes you're pushing, people are worried. They're worried about who you might attract to our neighborhoods. They're worried about property values, about safety. Finish the sentence, Jennifer said, her voice a quiet, dangerous thing. Go on, tell me exactly what kind of people you're so worried about. The silence that followed was absolute. Brenda's mouth worked, but the unspoken word hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. Jennifer's voice remained level, but each word landed like a blow. 3 years ago, my husband David ran into a burning elementary school. He saved 6 children before the roof collapsed. The city called him a hero. They gave me a medal at a ceremony where I had to smile while my heart was breaking. My children lost their father. I lost my soulmate. Her voice trembled but did not break. I moved my family here because I wanted them to have a safe place to heal. Good schools, a community, a pool where they could just be children. But you didn't see children. You saw 2 black kids, and your first instinct was to treat them like a threat. Marcus and Maya stood behind her, holding each other, their silent tears a testament to her words. My son has anxiety, Jennifer continued, her voice gaining strength. My daughter has nightmares. They have been through more trauma than any child should ever face. And today, you piled more on top of it, all because they wanted to go for a swim. Mrs. Rodriguez, a neighbor, spoke up, her voice shaking. She's right. I saw the whole thing. Those children did nothing wrong. Doug added, his voice filled with regret. I am ashamed. Ashamed I was ever married to someone who could do this, and ashamed I didn't speak up sooner. Cornered, Brenda's face flushed with defiant rage. I don't have to stand here and be bullied. I have rights. Just because you're the mayor doesn't mean you can attack me. I was protecting this community. You called the police on children, Jennifer stated, the simple fact more damning than any accusation. You made yourself the villain. Just then, Rachel, the mayor's assistant, quietly approached and showed Jennifer a tablet. The mayor glanced at it and nodded grimly. She addressed the crowd again. This is already on social media, multiple videos from multiple angles. The entire country is watching what happened here today. A young white mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Mayor Henderson, I am so sorry. I watched, and I said nothing. I should have helped your children. I'm so ashamed. But others remained silent, their discomfort warring with their desire not to get involved. Feeling the world closing in, Brenda lashed out. Fine, I'll resign from the HOA. Is that what you want? You've all turned on me. I hope you're happy. Miss Whitmore, Jennifer said, her voice calm and devoid of malice. This was never about destroying you. This is about my children's right to exist without being seen as a threat. This is about ensuring no other child in this community ever has to feel what they are feeling right now. If you cannot understand that, then yes, your resignation is for the best. Patricia Chen stepped forward. The HOA board will meet immediately. We need mandatory implicit bias training, and we need new policies. This will never happen again. I'm not taking any bias training, Brenda shrieked. There's nothing wrong with protecting our standards. Then you're done, Patricia said firmly. Resignation accepted. Jennifer gathered her children. Come on, babies, let's go home. As they walked away, she turned back one last time. To everyone here, this is about more than a pool. This is about every family that is constantly questioned, constantly doubted, treated as if they don't belong in spaces they have every right to occupy. We can be better than this. For our children's sake, we have to be. The crowd stood in stunned silence as the mayor's car pulled away, leaving behind a community fractured and forever changed. Jennifer chose to leave with her dignity, focusing on her children's well-being. But the story doesn't end there. In the days and weeks that followed, the real fight for the soul of Riverside Heights was only just beginning. That evening, the Henderson home was shrouded in a heavy silence. Jennifer made dinner, but no one ate. Huddled together in the living room, Marcus finally spoke, his voice small and broken. "Mom, can we move? I thought we'd be safe here." The words shattered what was left of Jennifer's heart. She pulled them close. "What happened today was not your fault. Do you hear me? You belong here. You did nothing wrong." "Then why does it feel like we did?" Maya whispered. Tears streamed down Jennifer's face. "Because that's what people like her want you to feel. They want you to question your own worth. But you are brilliant and strong and kind, and your father, he would be so, so proud of you both." The three of them held each other, a grieving, resilient little island in a home that no longer felt like a sanctuary. 1 week later, the Riverside Heights Community Center was packed for an emergency HOA meeting. News vans lined the street. The story had gone national. Inside, Patricia Chen stood at a podium. "Brenda Whitmore has resigned," she announced. Her real estate office has also terminated her employment. Brenda wasn't there. She had become a ghost in her own town, her face a meme for suburban racism. Her ex-husband, Doug, stood to speak, his voice trembling. "For too long I stayed silent, and silence is complicity. That ends tonight. We all have to do better." The community voted on new measures: mandatory bias training, anti-harassment protocols, a diversity and inclusion committee, and a formal apology to the Henderson family. The measures passed, though not unanimously. Change is never easy and never absolute. 2 months later, on a warm Saturday, the Henderson family stood at the pool gate once more. The children hesitated. "We don't have to do this," Jennifer said gently. Maya took a deep breath. "No, this is our pool too." They walked in. Mrs. Rodriguez greeted them with a brilliant smile. Doug and his new wife waved warmly. There were still some awkward glances, but they were outnumbered by nods of welcome. Maya walked to the edge of the water. For a heartbeat she paused, the memory of that day a ghost at her shoulder. Then she dove. A clean, perfect arc cutting through the blue water. She was swimming, powerful and free, reclaiming a space that had always been hers. Marcus settled into a lounge chair with a book, and Jennifer sat with a group of other parents talking about summer camps and school supplies, a normal conversation in a community that was imperfectly, haltingly, trying to heal. Watching her children, one reading peacefully, one swimming with joy, Jennifer knew the scars remained. But she also knew this: in the fight for belonging, sometimes the most courageous act is simply to show up, to take your space, and to dive back in.